In this lesson, we are going to talk about data policies and privacies, and we are going to be using Code.org's Computer Science Principles, Unit 10, and we're going to start with Lesson 3. So, for our warm-up, well, before you begin, download the activity guide, okay? This is what it's going to look like. And we're going to kind of go through this. Okay, so download that activity guide. All right, which of the following pieces of information would you consider to be private or personal? As in, you wouldn't want to share it with just anyone. Look through these, okay? If you would consider it to be private or personal on your activity guide, just make a mark or highlight it, okay? You can choose your highlighter button. Bloop. Okay, so pause the video here so that way you can go through and highlight what you would consider to be private or personal. And when you get done with that, okay, no, pause the video here. Okay, so you can do that. All right, now you have selected at least 5 of these pieces of information that you would consider to be private or personal, okay? So what I want you to do now is I want you to pick the top 3, the ones that you would consider to be the most sensitive pieces of data, okay? And I want you to put those in the discussion post with why you feel like those are your top 3. You may have individual reasons for each item, or you may just have a general reason. Okay, so pick your top 3 pieces of sensitive data from that list and put them in there. Don't actually put the information, okay? Just put whatever this says. Don't actually put your full name. Don't actually put your social security number, okay? Just copy whatever this says and then put it on there, okay? We're not actually filling in this information. All right. So pause the video here so you can put those in the discussion post. We know that computing innovations need data to run, but we don't always think about just how personal or private that information may be. We're about to kick off a 2-part lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to look at just how much personal data we share online. And then after that, we will debate pros and cons of sharing all of that data. So most good websites and apps will have a privacy policy that explains the data that they collect and the way it's used. We may have seen them before, but we've probably not read them. So, what we are going to do is watch this video, The Truth About Privacy Policies.
What's the deal with privacy policies? We've all received a bunch of them lately because of the new GDPR privacy regulation in Europe, but what am I supposed to do with all this info? How do I even begin to process this thing? Privacy policies are legal documents that are designed to shield companies from lawsuits. And because of this, Most of us probably don't even read these privacy policies. If we're being totally honest, we're also probably going to use these services regardless of what their privacy policies say anyway. But you should try to care about your data because it's not only important to know who you're giving it to in light of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal and major data breaches like Equifax, but also because you might find some interesting tools in these policies that'll give you more control over your information.
Privacy policies do have some value.
That's Joseph Jerome. He's going to help us learn about privacy policies, as is Nate Cardozo, the senior staff attorney at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. So, before we get into their hot privacy policy tips, let's first establish who actually has a privacy policy. It's basically every company.
You know, when you're signing up for a loyalty card in your grocery store, that's a huge data collection point.
Your grocery store might not seem like the pinnacle of technological achievement, but if they're collecting your information, they have to let you know some parameters around how they use it. Understanding what's written, though, isn't easy.
Humans write them with the notion to not make them clear and readable, but to make them legally bulletproof.
Joseph suggests looking for the word control to find what data settings you can change. He also looks for bullet points that sum up a policy.
If a company can't even give you some high-level highlights of what's going on, that suggests that they probably aren't as mature in their privacy thinking.
You can also easily check the date the privacy policy was published or last updated. You'll want to see something relatively recent to show the company takes privacy seriously. Finally, and crucially, Joseph says we'll want to figure out what information is collected about us. He's skeptical of companies that collect location information even if it's technically stored in the aggregate, meaning that location data isn't directly tied to your account. Basically, he just treats location information as sensitive and doesn't readily share it. Nate searches for the phrase such as in the policy, which is actually a bad thing.
If a privacy policy uses the term such as, that means they're collecting all sorts of stuff, and they're not going to tell you what they're collecting.
Just out of curiosity, let's look at some of these privacy policies and try out these tips. Alright, so let's of course start with Instagram's privacy policy. One word that Joseph mentioned is the word not. The reason you want to search for not is because companies typically won't put that in because that means they cannot do something, and that really limits them. This is interesting. It says, we will not rent or sell your information to third parties outside Instagram. But then it lists a bunch of exceptions, including giving this information to third-party advertising partners, which is not good, and that's probably what you're most interested in. How about trying such as? There's a such as, there's 5 such as's here. So here we have a such as that means we also share certain information such as cookie data. So that means they could be sharing cookie data, but it also leaves it very open. It could be other stuff too. They would not be happy. Now, what's interesting about Instagram is they actually have a separate policy called the data policy. We're going to check that out. I'm interested in the controls that Instagram offers, like Joseph mentioned. So I'm searching control, and immediately you can see, learn more about how you can control who can see the things you share. So it brought me to this page on Facebook, because Instagram's owned by Facebook, and I can actually go to my privacy settings and change them. And I can actually edit who can see my future posts. Right now it's public, which is not good. We can actually make it to friends. So now only friends will see my future posts. Go back to this data policy. This is interesting. This is facial recognition. So if I click that, it takes me straight to this facial recognition settings page and says, do you want Facebook to be able to recognize you in photos and videos? I'm uncomfortable with that, so I would say no. A lot of people probably don't know that these pages exist. So it's actually a nice feature that Instagram/Facebook calls your attention to these if you know what to search for in the data policy. Again, is any of this going to make me not use Instagram? Probably not, because I like Instagram, but it's good info to have. Plus, maybe vocal users could make a difference in company policies. Alright, is there nothing else we can do? What if I really, really hate this policy? Keep in mind you can always say no to giving a retail store your email or phone number. You can even ask why they need it. You could also set up a burner email account that you only use for spam mail. That at least segments your online identity a little bit. Nate also says we can request our data from companies because after GDPR was enacted, they have to give you your data if you request it. They'll often still give it to you even if you don't live in Europe. So now we're privacy policy professionals, sort of. But honestly, even still, privacy policies are a mess, and no one wants to spend forever reading them, except for maybe Joseph and Nate. Now, this is where things get interesting. Joseph believes AI will help us eventually parse through these policies and make sense of them.
I really hope we can get to what I think are standardized machine-readable privacy policies. Long term, we really need these policies to be machine-readable so they can be digested at scale.
Nate and the EFF, however, aren't proponents of these AI-assisted readings. Nate believes that AI would actually be terrible, could easily be gamed. Certain phrases like such as and not would trick the system, which does make sense given that we're just looking for those phrases too. Instead, he thinks the privacy policy itself needs to be solved with more information on data and how it's used. Maybe then, he says, AI would work. For now, we're going to just have to use our brains a little bit and try to understand what these privacy policies are telling us.
When advocates or researchers or even the general public read something in a privacy policy that is alarming to them, that has a way of trickling upward to companies. And a lot of the stories that we read about that are like, what is this company doing? That usually is first revealed through some sort of public statement they've made, oftentimes in their privacy policy.
Okay, so that's really interesting. I want you to think back or just scroll back and make a note of the top search words for the privacy policies, okay? Because what we're going to do now is to practice reading data policies to get a sense for what kinds of information is actually being collected by modern computing innovations like these websites and these apps that we use. So we're going to spend a little time filling out the front part of the activity guide, and your activity guide is looking like this. Okay, so you watched the video. If you need to go back, watch that. Choose a website or an app, so maybe Snapchat or other online source that you're familiar with, to research their data policy. The easiest way to find a data policy, if it exists, which it should, if they don't want to get sued, is to search for the company name followed by the terms data policy or privacy policy. So I'm going to give you an example onto the Google. All right, we are typing in Snapchat data. Oh, look what pops up right here. Data breach. Hello. Okay, red flag. All right, y'all should probably look into that if you use Snapchat. Okay. I don't know if you'll be able to access this while you are at school or on your school iPad. So keep that in mind. Commonsense.org. This would be a good site, but this is dated September of 2020, so it's not recent. And in the video, they were talking about it being recent and up to date is very important, and then they showed something from 2018. That's because the video was made in 2018. Okay, so that technically was recent then. Okay, so if this is what you've got, because you can't get to actual Snapchat's website, that's okay. You'll just put last updated September to 2020. PayPal updates theirs like twice a year, it feels like. So those are some things to keep in mind as you're searching for the website that you're going to research, okay? And what you're going to do with this information, you've got those top words that you're searching for, okay? You can work with somebody to do this, and you're going to choose the website or the app or the company, find their data policy, and share the answers. You're going to answer these questions. What kinds of data is collected? How is the data you listed above being used? What features are enabled? Does the company share the data with anyone else? Can you get access to your own data? Can you modify what is collected or delete your data if you wish? All right, so you're going to answer these questions on this activity guide. It's a little bit different than the other one, okay? So this one is called Activity Guide, Privacy, Security, and Innovation, and the other one is called CSP U10L3 Async Activity Guide. So you'll be using both of these. You'll need to download both of these, okay? So pause the video here so that way you can answer these questions. Put your website or your app up here. In this part of the lesson, we are going to talk about the value of privacy. So if you think back to what you put in your activity guide earlier, some privacy concerns might be that the app or the website will give or sell your personal information to some advertising company so that you are specifically targeted for ads. That's a concern. Like, why is somebody able to make money off of my information? Because that's not me. I'm not the one making money off of my information. So those are just things that you want to keep in mind as we move on. Okay. Since you just did your activity guide, this is not necessary. Okay. So as we watch the following video on facial recognition, I want you to take notes on these 3 questions. What are the benefits of the technology? What does it make more convenient or fun? And what are the privacy concerns that arise? Why would governments or businesses be interested in this technology? So pause the video here so that you can write down this information. Write down these questions. Let me double check and make sure they're not in your activity guide though. Okay, yeah, they're not. So write down these questions or like put them in a notes document because you'll submit these as part of your submission. Okay, so here's the video.
Let me get a...
Order confirmed. Citizen, number 5, extra pickles, medium fries. Thank you for your order.
But I never told you what I wanted to order.
Order confirmed. Thank you, citizen. Next in line, please.
Is it just me? Or does facial recognition seem to be creeping more and more into our daily lives? I mean, my face is pretty much being scanned on the regular. Sometimes it's my choice. Like when I use a Snapchat filter. They rely on facial recognition technology. And I don't seem to mind because, well, they're awesome. Facebook's auto-tagging makes uploading my photos super easy. And instead of remembering a passcode, the new iPhone 10 uses your face to unlock it. Oh, and by the way, there actually is a KFC restaurant in China that scans your face and orders your food for you. So look out for that, I guess, to become a thing. But for the most part, the media focuses on the darker aspects of the technology.
Nearly half of American adults are in facial recognition databases.
The technology can single us out in real time as we go about our daily business.
It's mass surveillance for the physical world.
So that got me thinking, should we smile and welcome facial recognition? Or should we be worried that it's going to be a major invasion of our privacy? Here's how facial recognition works. Computers map your face by analyzing dozens of different facial landmarks, like the depth of your eye sockets, the curve of your chin, and the size of your nose. Computers use artificial intelligence to analyze all this data. Basically, you have to train the computers on thousands of photos before they can accurately start identifying people by creating face prints, which are kind of like fingerprints in that they're unique to each person. Now, there's a growing concern that facial recognition will be used by governments and law enforcement to monitor and track people. Now, if we're talking about catching terrorists or identifying criminals, the technology might be a great tool to help keep us safe. But this same technology can also be used on us law-abiding citizens. In the U.S., there are an estimated 60 million surveillance cameras, meaning there's a pretty good chance that our faces are being recorded every day. So theoretically, if the FBI, CIA, or NSA had access to that footage, they can track the movements of any person 24/7. They know where you work, where you shop, who you like to hang with. Like, I don't want the government to know that I like to get my acupuncture done at 7:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. Now, this may sound futuristic and sci-fi, but the governments are using facial recognition right now. In some U.S. airports, border agents are scanning the faces of foreign visitors and matching those scans to their visa applications. It could be a more secure way to track when people enter and leave the country. The government is also partnering with some airlines to use facial recognition instead of boarding passes. For U.S. citizens, the facial scans are checked against photos stored in police databases. Now, you may be thinking, I've never committed a crime. My face isn't going to be in a police database. Well, police and the FBI have scanned millions of faces using driver's licenses and passport photos. A recent report out of Georgetown University reveals that if you're an adult in the U.S., there's a 50-50 chance that your photo is stored in a massive face recognition database that law enforcement can access anytime it wants for pretty much any reason. You know the classic police lineup you see in the movies? The detective invites the witness down to the station to pick out the criminal who's standing in the line with a bunch of other people. These photo databases are basically digital police lineups, allowing law enforcement to compare one face to millions of others. Check out what's happening in Moscow, Russia's capital. The government is adding facial recognition technology to its network of 170,000 surveillance cameras located throughout the city. It's supposed to be used to identify criminals and boost security, but what if you're at a rally protesting the government? The police could use facial recognition to pick you out of a crowd and maybe even punish you for your actions. And covering your face might not protect you. A new research paper demonstrated that facial recognition could correctly identify a concealed face 67% of the time. Yikes. In China, the government takes facial recognition to the next level. To curb jaywalking, which apparently is a big problem in the country, the Chinese government has resorted to public shaming. Jaywalkers get their photos snapped by government-owned cameras, and then 20 minutes later, their picture is up on a giant screen with their ID number and home address. Again, yikes. Now, facial recognition is not just about safety and tracking down criminals. It's also about making money. When you and your friends are auto-tagged when you upload a photo to Google or Facebook, that's one more data point that companies can use to track what you do online, what you like, and what you buy. But that's the cost of free technology. It's right there in the terms of service that none of us ever read. We use a super useful tool at no cost. The tech companies mine every photo, status update, and tweet for info that online advertisers are willing to pay big money for. Facebook and Google alone are predicted to make $106 billion from advertising this year. That's nearly half of all the money made from digital advertising in the world. Big box retailers are getting into the game too. Walmart has filed a patent for facial recognition technology that can identify when shoppers are unhappy or frustrated, which the company says will allow it to provide better customer service. But that same data can also be used to track purchases and predict what items you might buy in the future. So now we'd like to hear from you. Where would you draw the line? In what situation would you be comfortable allowing facial recognition? Whenever? Law enforcement only? Just private companies? Or pretty much never? Let us know in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe. And if you want to learn more about technology and privacy, check out this episode we did on cybersecurity to learn how to keep all your digital info safe.
Okay, so we're going to kind of stop it there. And obviously, there's no comments below. So, you took notes though. And you said you answered these questions. If you didn't answer them, then go back, like rewind, go back and make sure that you answer those, okay? We're not going to share them with a partner because, I mean, unless you're sitting beside somebody, you can share them with somebody. Okay, but on our Unit 2 discussion board, I want you to answer this question. Do you believe the privacy risks posed by facial recognition technology outweigh the benefits or convenience? And then I want you to put why. Okay, so I'm expecting at least 5 sentences for this. And what you're going to do in this discussion post is you are going to, let me find somewhere where I can type to show you how I expect this to look. Okay, so as you type, you're going to start with this is how you're going to start it. Okay, and then you're going to repeat the question. Do you believe the privacy risks posed? You know what? Let me scoot it up right there. Okay. I believe the privacy risks posed by facial recognition technology either outweigh or do not. So that's kind of up to you. And then give your reasons why. Remember, minimum of 5 sentences. No, let's change it to 3 sentences. And respond to someone else's post. All right, because this is not just like a yes or no question. Okay, this can go deep. This is like some deep conversation. And if we were sitting in a classroom, we could probably spend at least 30 minutes just talking about this topic. Okay, so in that discussion post, no, the discussion board, let me find it. And that's not it. Okay. The discussion board I'm talking about is this one, Unit 2 discussion board. So you're going to say, set it up like how I put it right here. And actually we can delete that. Okay, so just say U2L4 dash and then give your answer. Okay. So pause the video here so that way you can go ahead and do that. Now that you have put your beliefs on that discussion board, I want you to go ahead and go back to your activity guide, and we're going to pretty much put what you put on that discussion board, you're going to put it right here, okay? Do you believe the benefits of the innovation you researched? Oh, so this is not the same. Do you believe the benefits of the innovation you researched outweigh the privacy concerns? So you're going back up to the website that you chose. If it was Snapchat or Instagram or PayPal or whatever, that's the innovation that you researched. Do you believe the privacy concerns, do you believe the benefits of that service outweigh the privacy concerns? And then explain why or why not, and put at least 3 sentences here. Pause the video here so you can go ahead and do this. So now we're going to look at security versus privacy. And we're going to watch another video, and I want you to keep track of these questions in your notes also. What kind of data is being collected and shared? Who is the third party in this situation? Why is this a trade-off between privacy and security? So you're going to answer these in your notes that you're also going to submit. So let's go.
On Friday, the Supreme Court ruled that cops need a search warrant before getting data from your cell phone that shows where you were and when. It's a major privacy decision and sets one of the strongest legal limits yet on how the government can access your data. But the justices also stressed that their ruling was narrow and only applies to the type of data in question, historical cell phone location information, not real-time cell records or national security surveillance, for example. The ACLU argued this case on behalf of Timothy Carpenter, who was arrested for a series of robberies around Detroit, largely because data from his cell phone put him near the crimes. Records of where you use your phone can construct a detailed portrait of your life, where you eat, work, study, or pray, and even if you're having an affair. But the FBI didn't get a warrant for Carpenter's location data, because back in 2011, it didn't need to. Until Friday, those records weren't federally protected by the Fourth Amendment, which guards against warrantless search and seizure, because users choose to give those records to a third party, their cell service provider. This Fourth Amendment caveat is known as the third-party doctrine, and arguments in Carpenter versus US centered around whether it holds up in the 21st century, when disclosing your personal data to third-party companies is basically unavoidable. So tech firms have something at stake in this case too, and some of them, including Facebook, filed a joint brief with the court. The companies said they weren't picking a side, but did argue that the government should have a more nuanced view of what kind of information it can scoop up without a warrant. Friday's decision basically agreed with that, saying there's a world of difference between digital location data and the types of data the doctrine originally applied to, like bank records and telephone numbers. Even though Friday's ruling focused only on certain types of location data, that clarification of how the third-party doctrine should be applied to modern technology sets a big precedent for what types of information the Fourth Amendment protects. And as more facets of daily life are automated and recorded by corporations, that could have implications for things that go beyond the places where you've been using your phone.
Okay, so you're answering these questions in your video notes, and you're going to put this question answer this question on the discussion board. Again, starting it with U10. What you can do to distinguish this one from the last one is you can say U10 L4 2. Okay. You can say I agree / or I do not agree with the ruling, and then give your reasons and put at least 3 sentences and respond to someone else's post. Okay. So let's look at our activity guide. You're going to think about the privacy trade-offs for the website or the app that you researched, okay? And I want you to determine how comfortable you feel with the information that they are getting based on that, based on their privacy policy, okay? So you have totally comfortable, like, here, take my data. It makes technology. I love work and keeps me safe. So you have totally uncomfortable, which is I'd give up most technology and would like to see much stronger limits on what kind of data can be collected and stored, even if it limits the introduction of new technology. So like number 5, you're pretty much wanting to go live off the grid at this point. Number 1, you're like, they already know everything about me anyways. So, which of the above categories best describes your overall comfort with using data to drive innovations or ensure security? Write a paragraph, which is at least 5 sentences, below explaining your response and tying it to either the information in this activity guide or discussions that we have shared on the discussion board. Okay, so pause the video so you can have a moment to complete this. Now that you've completed that, I want you to go through and I want you to grade yourself on this rubric, okay? So if you have provided extensive evidence about data collection and use, your response, 1, include many examples of data collected by the company that are clearly tied to the examples in response 2, indicating how that data is used. This is convincing evidence. Both responses include many examples, but there may not always be connections between the kind of data collected and the way it is used. So make sure you're making a note of all of the different kinds of data collected and how those are used. Okay, response 3 and 4. Now let's go back and look at these because we did these in the earlier lesson. Question 3 and question 4. That's going to be response 3 and 4. Clearly describe how users' data is shared externally and whether and if users have any controls over their data. All right, evaluating your innovation. The response provides a clear opinion on the trade-offs based on the information provided on the first page. So you're a clear opinion. You are either for it or you're against it. Maybe you're in the middle. Which parts are you for? Which parts are you against? That's possible. I would, if you're very specific about what you're for and what you're against, I would consider that to be extensive evidence, okay? Evaluating the privacy trade-offs. The response provides a clear opinion on the overall privacy trade-offs based on the information. So one thing I want you to notice about this rubric is this stuff is factual, okay? This stuff is your opinion. As long as I can tell that you are very clear about how you feel, you're going to be solid, okay? So grade yourself based on what you've completed so far, and I really look forward to reading your responses, and I really, really wish that we were in the classroom so that we could just speak. But I will also be participating on this discussion board, so I'm a little excited. Okay, so there will always be trade-offs between privacy and new exciting technology. So think about when you use social media sites and are offered targeted advertising based on your browser history. This can be useful. You may be introduced to things you want to buy or information you want to know about. However, it can also be harmful. Targeted advertising can be used to gather data about a user or a group of users for malicious reasons. In this case, the innovation is not being used as it was originally intended to be used. So consider this as you research the impacts of your computing innovations. We are not doing the innovation simulation project, so you don't have to worry about that. Make sure you double check the assignment post in Schoology for everything that needs to be submitted for this assignment.